folks, it's Lindy County Agent here from Pendleton County Cooperative Extension Service. And today I have a very special guest with me, and we're very delighted to bring you another episode in the series of growing your garden from the ground up. But today's series is a little bit different. It focuses on food preservation of one of the my favorite staple crops that is great in any kitchen, and I can add it to any dish, and that's going to be garlic. So today I have Rose Sinning of Fairy Rose Farm, the head fairy farmer. She's a member of the Pendleton County Farmers Market, one of the #1 extension volunteers here, and we offered her a spot that she'll tell you about here in just a minute. But today we're going to talk about garlic braiding. Now, this is a garlic braid that we put together really quickly, and this is just a very simple historical drying method. So food preservation practices, we always have to use research-based practices, but air drying is one of the most basic forms that you can establish. It's been around for decades, centuries, eons. It's been around for a very long time, as long as humans have been practicing the cultivation of food and food storage so that they can survive the season. So this is a very small garlic braid with just 5 cloves, which is what you'll be making today, but we're going to talk to you briefly about what it took to get to this stage. So, Rose, I came to you last fall and said, hey, you think you want to raise some garlic?
And I said, yes, please, but we don't have any space at our farm to do that right now.
And I said, well, how about that? We have an educational center out here at the extension office, and those raised beds were looking a little shabby, and let's face it, I needed a little bit of help, so I called on my trusty volunteer here.
Yep, and so we came in, cleared the beds, rebuilt as needed, put all new soil in, and we planted 12 pounds of garlic in November. That should have happened in October, but we were running a little bit late by the time we got all this together.
And I came to her in September, by the way. And when we rebuilt, though, it's of note to mention that the board that she utilized came from the Veterans Park picnic table service project that we did.
Right, so yep, we cut as we needed to, replaced all the boards that we needed to so that we could get a little more bed depth. We needed a little more soil depth than they had. So we planted, like I said, 12 pounds in November, put 6 inches of straw mulch on the entire bed, and then tied everything down for the winter with bird netting so that the straw stayed on there protecting. We pulled the straw off, I want to say, probably middle of April, early May. As soon as we saw the first couple of garlic leaves poking out from the straw, we pulled all the mulch back, got everything down to the soil level, gave everybody a big layer of blood meal and compost, put a little straw back on, kept them watered, kept them fed, and then we actually harvested the beds 4th of July that week. We ended up, as it stands now, we think we probably got about 50 pounds of garlic out of those beds for the 12 pounds that we planted.
Perfect. And when you plant garlic, Rose, now this is a bulb of garlic, but you would not just plant this particular bulb. When that garlic came to you,
we had to divide all of it up into cloves, just like that.
You had to break apart the garlic bulbs into cloves and planted each individual clove.
Yep. We spent 2 days taking all of that and breaking it down into single cloves, and then determining which of the cloves were the biggest, because the size of the clove planted determines and how big the plant is going to be on the other end. So if you plant the littlest cloves, you're going to get the littlest plants. And if you're gonna, so you can tell the difference here between. So if these would be little cloves and these would be big cloves. So it's a pretty drastic difference. So we spent 2 days peeling, sorting to make sure that we were planting the biggest cloves we had available to us to get the biggest plants on the other end.
That's really cool.
And it was a lot of stinky work, let me tell you.
Just from this one clove, I can already smell the garlic, and when we were harvesting the garlic, it took us about 2 hours to harvest everything, to loosen it up, but we were a little smelly afterwards, but it was really good, pretty easy work, because in the raised beds with the garden soil that we have, typically, because this is a bulbous plant, we want to have some loose soil in it. Will help to break up that soil compaction. But here in Pendleton County, we have clay. But in those raised beds, we were able to choose a little bit better soil. She added compost and the blood meal, which helped to break down and get those microbes and organic matter working to have some really good soil, so that when it came down to it, we just loosened up those plants and then just pulled those bulbs straight out. So ideally, in a pre-COVID world, we were all going to be together during our braiding class, and these were going to be really nice, lush green tops that you can see, but our tops are a little bit dry and crumbly because these have indeed been curing in our ham house here. So we've multi-purpose, we built racks for that, and you can see how these bulbs have cured. So each participant in the program is going to be receiving 5 bulbs or heads of garlic that we're going to be putting into this braid today. But before we get there, we're going to continue to educate you a little bit more about some of the things that you want to look for when you're harvesting. So Rose already talked about when you do bulb selection, when you're planting, you want to make sure that you're selecting for the larger cloves. So the larger cloves are going to produce larger heads of garlic, and the smaller cloves are going to produce the smaller heads of garlic. So that's step 1. Now, when we are harvesting, there's a few things that we run into and some challenges, right? One is operator error. And what is that, Rose?
That is, well, I thought the shovel was far enough away from the garlic, but no, I was wrong.
So in that case, we might nick garlic. So, and by that nick here, we're looking at this cut into this clove that you can see. And you can see in this particular one where we've added and allowed a lot of dirt entry into there. So when we enter soil or dirt, in this case, we're entering potential pathogens. But that doesn't mean that this whole head of garlic is gone to waste. What we can do is simply remove this one piece of clove that is damaged, or any of the cloves that are damaged, but we want to discard that, but then we can keep and utilize this using any of the other storing methods. We can use it fresh, because once you start peeling back these layers of protection, the shelf stability doesn't last nearly as long. The braid that we're looking at is going to last 3 to 6 months with good air ventilation. You want it in a cool, dark place, and again with 3 to 6 months. So don't put it next to your refrigerator, next to your stove, next to any appliances where you get a lot of heat, because then that's going to introduce and cause that to break down and deteriorate more. So think more of your basement, in a corner, in a well-ventilated area that's going to get plenty of airflow. So we know that operator error is number 1. We may have damaged a few, but fear not. So if you do happen to receive any that have any nicks, just remove that one clove and you're good to go, and you can keep that. When we're selecting and we're harvesting, what are we looking for as far as the structure to the bulb?
So you want it to be firm to the touch, no squishy cloves. Squishy cloves, not our friends, because those have already started to deteriorate. So you're looking for something firm, with no injuries and no strange color discolorations. I know we ran into at least a few cloves where I would have thought by touch alone it was fine, but it had a strange color cast to it that we just went ahead and peeled them off, just because bad things can get in there that you do not know about until you eat it and get really, really sick. So if you have any question in your mind of should I or shouldn't I, always go with I should not.
Absolutely.
Not is always better.
So when we're looking at these again, so you can see if I smush this, you can see how that gives way. I could peel that back for you and let you really see what that looks like, but I would prefer not to be that smelly today. So again, when we harvest those cloves, we're looking for very firm bulbs. So this is a very firm, compact garlic bulb that we're looking at, and you can see size difference. And this one here just has that soft spot, which means that it's deteriorating there. Now the whole thing, again, doesn't have to be thrown away. I can pull off these, like on this side we have one that's got another injury, so I would remove that one, but there's still plenty of cloves of garlic in there that I can just peel off and use fresh in my kitchen tonight. Another thing that we're looking for is if you wait too long, which we almost did for harvesting, because again, we were planning and trying to move around the new COVID-19 procedures because we wanted to have you here in person so you could really experience this braiding class again with us. But this one was going a little bit too far. So if you leave the garlic in the beds for too long, you're looking, when you start to harvest, you're actually looking for when the bottom leaves start to brown. When those first leaves start to brown is when those bulbs are ready to remove from the soil, but you always want to test one or two to make sure that you see where you're at in the production. But what's your fun fact about garlic?
So when you plant that initial clove, as the plant starts growing, in our case, we planted in the fall, it started growing the following spring, you have that single clove, but as it starts to grow and produce more cloves, it will do that in a spiral. So it will grow out from the center in bigger and bigger circles. So when you start to look at that, that's the helix. So each of those additional cloves puts out a new leaf. So if you have a plant with 10 leaves, that means you will have 10 cloves on the bulb.
So for this one right here, I thought this was fascinating because you can almost tell roughly the size or at least how many cloves you're going to have. And this one in my hand, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 leaves on this. And I might have missed one, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I had already peeled one off from the one that was missing there. So you can tell how many cloves, and each clove, the bulb is the whole structure, and each clove is each individual piece that you can just break off. So the tiny little pieces like you would cook with, which you would mince or grate in your daily cooking.
Right.
So
we're dehydrated if it gets to that point. And something else I discovered this year that I was not aware of is that the cloves can actually be frozen. So if you're getting to the point where you think you're about to lose your time and you really need to either use it or lose it, you can go ahead and peel all the garlic cloves all the way down to the clove itself, put them in a Ziploc bag, push all the air out, stick them in your freezer, and then just pull out a clove as you need it out of the freezer.
So garlic is one of those other crops that we have that has a lot of versatility, and we've got publications from the University of Kentucky for growing garlic as a crop, but we have a few from some of our sister and partner land grant institutions like Michigan State and Oregon State University for preserving, and these will be included in your packet. So again, if you get some that are damaged, there's no need to use them all immediately fresh. You can dehydrate, you can freeze them, or you can continue to dry them if they're non-damaged in the braids like we're getting ready to do. So let's get started, Rose. So one of the first things that you want to do when you're selecting for your braid is that you can see that garlic comes in a lot of different shapes. So we've got some really large bulbs that are about the size of my palm, and we have some very small bulbs which are about half the size
Ping pong
of
ball.
that ping pong ball size. So when we're braiding, we want to select our bulbs to all be roughly in the same shape. So when we harvested, we immediately came in and we graded that garlic. So we had a whole lot that were in the large jumbo category, we had quite a bit in the moderate category, and we had some small in the we're going to use these pretty quickly category. So just because they're small, we wanted to go ahead and use those and then really utilize these large bulbs in our preservation practices. So when we have those, we've already selected here, we have 5 bulbs that are roughly the same size, and these have already been cleaned and trimmed. So we're going to show you that step now. So first thing you're going to need is you're going to need either a pair of snips or a pair of scissors. So you can see that we've left this root structure off. We have knocked off a lot of this soil, but we're simply going to come in and we're going to trim off these root systems. So this is just removing some of the surface area for any pathogens, and we want to just trim those off. And again, a pair of regular scissors are sufficient to trim those off. So we're just knocking off the dirt and trimming those. And you're going to do this to each of your bulbs in preparation for the braid. These are just merely here for demonstration purposes. The next step after you trim off the roots is to start peeling the garlic. Now, we want to remove as few layers as possible to have a very clean surface, or as clean to be able to knock off that debris. So we don't want to remove it to where you can easily see every clove, because that's going to determine and diminish how many months this is going to hold on your shelves. So this top layer, the sheath is going to slide off very easily because it's already disconnected from the bulb. And on this one, you can see that I've got some very dirty here. And all I'm going to do is just peel this outer layer off. And remember, we're going to do this for every bulb. Now, for the bulbs that you're working with your braid, you want to leave the foliage on top, because that's what you're going to use to keep it together. So this one is pretty clean. If I just take a little brush, like a little dry vegetable brush, I can even brush off some of this again, and we can make sure this is clean. So this one is ready to go, and I've already prepped our braid, okay, our garlic for our braid. So I'm going to just dust my little section off here to have semi of a clean workstation. There's no need to be overly clean with this, because again, once you go to use these, you're going to be peeling off those outside layers, and you're going to be getting down to those fresh cloves of garlic. So let's get set. Now, historically, all you need in order to preserve this garlic is a knife to trim off the roots and your garlic cloves. Your garlic braid can be as large as you want, as long as you have stems to braid. In this particular case, because this is a very introductory course, we have 5 heads or 5 bulbs of garlic for you in each of your kits, and that's what we're going to be braiding today. So you're going to get very basic idea of what the process looks like, and it's a simple plait that's pretty easy to do, and there's plenty of other videos if you want a little bit more information. You'll also be receiving an easy diagram that'll kind of walk you through some of these steps as well, but please always feel free to refer back to this video. So we have our bulbs here. We have 5 of those. They're all roughly the same size. So I'm just going to spread them out so that I've got some room to work. Now, traditionally, when they were doing these, they would not use any type of twine or jute. It's simply in the production of braiding. In this case, we're going to cheat a little bit because we aren't using as many bulbs, so it's not going to give us as secure of a structure as we would typically see, but we're going to use some jute to help us. So we're going to start with 3 bulbs, and what we're going to do is we're going to first cross 2 bulbs in an X-shaped pattern, and then we're going to add our 3rd bulb, and we're going to lay it right on top, and they're going to sit right on top of each other. So you can see that I have my X pattern here, and my 3rd bulb is going to lay right in with the stem facing straight up the center. From here, we're going to take the stem of the one that is closest to the table. So this is the one that is your bottommost layer of stem, and you're merely going to cross that over the center, and it's going to move to the right. We're going to do this one more time from the left. We're going to alternate left over center, and now we have a nice start to our plait. Now, to cheat a little bit to make sure that this is secure, I'm going to take a piece of jute, which has been supplied in your bag, merely slide that under, and I'm going to tie a simple square knot, a double square knot. And we're going to keep this as tight as possible. Now, your garlic stems may be a little dry and clumsy, but you're gonna keep those as tight as possible. Now, typically we would harvest or braid right after harvest. Right, immediately. But in this case, we wanted to go ahead and experiment with curing, which has worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So we've tried a couple different methods of curing, but you can still braid with these crusty tops. It's just maybe not going to be as Instagram worthy or Pinterest friendly as we would hope it would be, right? But this is still a great practice. It's all about practicality today. So we have our 3 base here. We have the simple X and the one up the center. Now, every time we go to add a bulb, we're going to simply take our clean bulb and we're going to put the bulb physically to the right or the left, alternating, but your stem is always gonna go right up the center. So you wanna make sure that that's lined up. And then, so what I'm gonna do is take the one that's closest to the table, right over center. So now I have my center stem has switched. And my next bulb is going to come to the left, but my stem is still going to be in center. So then I'm going to take left over center. And now if we were going to continue with more bulbs, we would simply just add another bulb here, making sure our stem line's in the center, cross our plait, then add a bulb to the left, cross our plait, bulb to the right, cross our plait. And you're going to continue doing that for as many bulbs as you have, but in this case, again, for this introductory course to garlic braiding, we have 5 bulbs. So to finish this project, we're just going to simply continue braiding the stalks, right? So, right over center, left over center, right over center, left over center, right over center, left over center. So, just trying to keep those stems as straight as possible, and keeping your stems together from each side. And we're just gonna finish this braid.
I promise if you do this when the garlic's a little greener, it won't sound nearly as crunchy.
It is a little crunchy today. So now that I've finished the braid, and you can see that it's not very pliable, it has a little bit of breakage in it. That's perfectly okay. It's not gonna harm the curing of the garlic. Again, it's just not as Instagram worthy, but let's live in the real world for y'all. So now I'm gonna take a second piece of jute, and when I get to the end of where I want my braid to be, I'm simply going to tie a double square knot so that it's secure, and then I can tie a loop. If you know other fancy knots, I like to do a butterfly knot first and then tie it off with a couple of square knots. But today it's about garlic braiding and not knot tying. So now I knot with a hook so that I can go and I can hang this up.
Yay!
I can hang it in a well-ventilated area, making sure I'm in about 46 to 60 degrees, so you want it to be semi-cool, a little bit cooler than room temperature. It's going to give you more longevity, but you can also store these at room temperature, but just if your house stays a little bit warmer, they may not last for the full 6 months. So doing smaller braids with less garlic may be more advantageous for you, but we feel that 5 cloves in most average households is going to be a good way to get you through 3 to 6 months. But if you want to continue to process these with dehydration or freezing, you're more than welcome to do so. You can use these fresh, but where else can they go?
Where else can they go? They can come and see us at the farmer's market at Pendleton County at the 4-H grounds every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. We will have them available for sale there.
So they have fresh garlic. If this isn't enough to suit your needs, or if you run out, they have dehydrated garlic ready for you at the farmer's market. So be sure to come out and visit them. So I'd like to take the time to thank Rose for her investment in this project and for coming up with my crazy schemes, but it was a true help to us here at the Extension office to run our Extension education beds. But it's partnerships like these between Extension and farmers that help us grow community. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Growing Your Garden from the Ground Up with Lindy County Agent
and Rose Sinning from Fairy Rose Farm.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.